So I'm a lighting designer, and I ran into American Lighting by chance 7 or 8 years ago when I was doing a project where a film studio in this building in the center was like, our building's really ugly, we want to make it interesting. And I said, well, what can we do to that building? And I specified some neon replacement product and from a manufacturer that I'd been using for a couple of years. And the local showroom suggested American Lighting as a substitute. And so I took a look at the product and I said, yeah, okay, we can use that. And since then, American has become a go-to for me in terms of product across the line. But I started with this slide because it was the first project, but then I've got a nice big X here because that's not really what I'm going to talk about. The polar neon, or the product that looks like neon, was maybe the first linear piece that I've started using. But now, after doing a dozen restaurants and things with it, I don't do very much of that anymore because I'm doing primarily residential. And in the residential, most people don't want neon. Not to say that there aren't some that do, right? So we're going to talk mostly about commercial spaces and residential spaces and how to use it indoors. These are the learning objectives for the presentation. There's no such thing as a free lunch. These people want something from you. Listening to a lighting lecture after eating a Cuban lunch is difficult to do without sleeping. The average participant will receive 6 calls and 42 emails during every lunch and learn. So this is what I hope you to take away from the presentation. And then finally, why you should buy truckloads of linear lighting from American Lighting. So this is what Jennifer asked me to cover. We'll make sure that we get to that through all 4 of those points by the end of the presentation. But really, it's about 2 questions. Why use linear, and where do you use linear? There is an incredible amount of opportunity in lighting in linear, and that's essentially my message today. So why linear? Why use linear? I'm going to talk about 2 major reasons. One is health or medical science that we've all seen some articles, comes out in the news all the time. Lighting is in the news more than it has been really since Thomas Edison, right? So 20 years ago, lighting wasn't in the news. 30 years ago, lighting wasn't in the news. 40 years ago, lighting wasn't in the news. Now, you click lighting news and it's all over the place. So we'll talk a little bit about that health and science discovery that's happened, a little bit about the technology revolution, but then also from a dollars and cents standpoint, why should we pay more attention to linear than most of us are paying attention to? And I want to start with some questions to assess your lighting knowledge, right? I want to understand where you are. So how many of you are reps? Let's see, raise your hand if you're a rep. There's some reps. How many of you work in a showroom, distributor, that sort of, okay, great. So I have some questions up here. I'm going to put 4 questions up here. They are true or false questions. One of them will be false, and the others will be true. I'm giving you that hint because it makes it really easy to answer. So, Catherine from Southern Design Lighting, awesome, thanks for coming. The Department of Energy recently eliminated LED requirements for candelabra, globe, and reflector lamps, potentially requiring taxpayers to pay for $15 billion in new power plants by 2025. Is that true or false?
I would hope it would be false, but it's probably true.
It is true, right? And when you walk around the showrooms out here, you understand why there's pushback against the energy codes that are saying, we should get rid of incandescent decorative lamps. We're the big ones. Because those little LEDs cost more, right? And until recently, they haven't been nearly as good as the incandescent that places in there. So this is something that I think will happen, but it's, the industry and the government are trying to figure out how to make it work at a pace that's acceptable, that doesn't cause major loss for people. But yeah, if we don't ever change over to LEDs, taxpayers could have to build $25 billion in new power plants to cover the electricity usage from those fixtures. Okay. Leslie, thanks. That was awesome. You knew exactly what I was looking for. Signify, formerly Philips Lighting Division, has 9 conventional lamp factories. 2 years ago, it had 46. Is that true or false?
I would think it's true.
It's true, right? So I put this up here to show you how the lighting industry is changing. We all know that because you all are working in lighting, but it's massive. That change, that technology and business change in lighting is huge. So Philips which was one of the big 3 or 4, spun off their division, sold off, Signify, and now, of course, they're not doing conventional light bulbs, right? It doesn't happen anymore. Okay, and your name is? Scott? He had to check. He had to Scott. His name is not Scott, right? David Warfel has written for Fine Home Building, House, Lighting and Sound America, Live Design, and The New Yorker. Is that true or false?
Who's David Warfel?
That's me.
I'm going to say that's true.
That one is false. And you know why?
Why?
The New Yorker would never pay me to write for them. right. Yeah, if it's got something like building and housing and lighting in it, and it's for, yeah, maybe yes, but the New Yorker is false. Okay, yeah, it was a trick question. Faye?
Oh, I'm his sister, and I'm in witness too.
You're in witness too?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know who you are, but we're gonna ask you a question anyway. Linear lighting includes neon, fluorescent, cold cathode, fiber optics, LEDs, electroluminescent, and incandescent sources. There's a hint. Only one of the questions is false, and we already know what it is.
Yeah.
So is that true or false?
People are still using fiber optics.
Right, that's the real question. People are still using any of these? Not really. They are all linear sources, but you're absolutely right. I mean, how many of you remember cold cathode, right? Where you could custom bend the tubes to get look. That was the bee's knees of linear technology at one point. But as you can see in this showroom, there's no cold cathode. Who wants to deal with heating and bending a glass pipe? Pretty much no one. Okay, so let's talk about the financial aspects of linear lighting, of why there is a lot of opportunity in this category. Perry?
Thank God you're out of questions. Oh,
I know, I'm out of questions. State lighting company. What state?
Confusion.
The state of confusion?
Florida.
Okay, so in a typical residential project, do you do houses? Okay, how much of that sale, if you were to say, okay, here's decorative, and then there's what we call architectural, the stuff that isn't a chandelier or a pendant or a wall sconce, how much of that is recessed downlights versus how much of it is linear?
I would say in jobs, I do high-end homes, so jobs I work on, the recessed lights could be 20%, 25%. The linear could be equal to that.
Equal to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is awesome. So you're doing houses where the linear is equal to the recessed. Does anybody have a different equation, or are you all seeing that? What'd you say?
So we do more recessed than linear.
More recessed than linear? How much?
Well, for the most part, I'm speaking for them, but for the most part, we're seeing linear being used functionally in kitchens.
Okay, so linear goes in the kitchen.
Under cabinet.
Yep.
More so than anything
Under the
else.
cabinet. Yeah.
And linear is and recess is being used throughout the entire house.
And recess is everywhere. So, like, I just made up a percentage here that's like, okay, well, if I had $100,000, 95 of it would be recessed and 5 would be linear. Is that, do you raise your hand if you see a lot more recessed than linear? Okay, and no, you told me it was equal.
Well,
are you changing your answer,
no,
Perry?
No, I'm saying the dollars on the dollar. I'm talking dollars, not how many products.
So the dollars is much higher in recess for you?
No, the dollars actually somewhat close.
Okay,
Because
okay.
I do under cabinet cove,
Great.
cabinets, backlighting, things, toe lighting. I mean, I use it in a lot of places. If I recommend it,
They'll do it.
they'll consider going with it.
Yeah. So at the end of this, I want you all to come up and get his business card, right? And say, how do we do this? When I started out, it was more like this, right? It was more like tons more recessed lighting than linear lighting. And we're getting to where you are, Perry, with linear lighting and recessed down lighting being much more on equal footing, right? So we've got a lot of money here, and we've got a lot of money here. Now, if you are really concentrating on this part of the deal, then this part of the deal is being left unsold, right? It's being left off the table. So in a simple graph, because I can't do math, it has to be pictures, right? I say the potential for recessed lighting is perhaps becoming less and less of a total job, and the potential for linear lighting is becoming more and more. Now, how far can you go with that? You can go pretty far. But let's talk about What I see are the two most common diseases in residential lighting, and those are CFLS, or advanced CFLS, which is ceiling fan light syndrome. Okay, ceiling fan light syndrome affects 9 out of 10 Americans, right? It's a major problem, and it is, of course, when the only light source in the room is a ceiling fan. I love ceiling fans. I put them in all my bedrooms. We have one over the kitchen, the dining room table right now. The house that we moved into had that. To me, that's just weird. I've got to get rid of it, but we just moved, so I haven't done that yet. But I love ceiling fans. This approach, however, is not so great. Let's look at it from a sales standpoint, of course, or from an electrical standpoint. If you are a distributor selling switches and dimmers, how many of those are you selling? So you've got loads. Maybe you've got them separately switched, right? You've got a fan and then a light, and then you've got this one fixture, and you're selling it for $300 to $1,000 or $1,200 or whatever the cost of that is. I'm using kind of just a basic price of $300 here. So here's the fixture sale for the showroom if your client is suffering from ceiling fan light syndrome. Now, the next common disease is what I call 4CNF, or 4 cans in a fan. And 4 cans in a fan is also a very common affliction. It's probably the other 1 in 10 Americans, right? If 9 out of 10 have ceiling fan light syndrome, the other 1 have 4 cans in a fan. Now, it is an advantage here because we're moving up in number of fixtures, right? So the fixture sale there is increasing. The loads stay the same. If we're selling them a $50 downlight, it's not a huge increase in sale. We're getting to $500. But what about linear? Right? So when we do design, and my business is designing homes, my team and I design across the country, and when a client hires us to come in, we try to move them away from ceiling fan light syndrome or 4 cans in a fan. We try to move them towards design. And design means we're like, okay, well, let's put the downlights where we want them. So that when you're standing at the dresser, you can actually tell if your socks are navy or if they're black. Right? Because if the downlight's right here, as it is in 4 cans in a fan, then the downlight is behind me when I'm looking into my drawer, right? So I'm trying to figure that out. Maybe we want reading lights, or maybe we're going to aim those at the headboard or at the art that's above the bed, right? So, there's a hole. I better add a can. So I just added a fixture in there. And I want them to be adjustable, right? I'm a designer. I want to be actually able to shine it onto the wall. So I make them all adjustable fixtures. And now that's a different fixture sale, right? Now I'm going to add a cove in of some sort to get some indirect, some soft light, what's lost from taking the light fixture off of the ceiling fan. I'm going to put that in there. And now, even if I'm using, $15 a foot for linear, I've got an $1,100 sale in that room instead of a $300 fan. And the math there, I don't, like I said, I can't do math, but if you expand that times 4 bedrooms times 10 houses, it starts to add up, the difference with and without linear. So you can choose, I put this up as a menu, right? You can choose ceiling fan light syndrome, 4 cans in a fan, or design that includes a significant amount of linear. It's totally up to you. But I'll tell you that we're doing the one on the right. That's what we're designing. I thought I would, just in case you didn't know what ceiling fan light syndrome looked like, I would put in a photograph of ceiling fan light syndrome. It's beautiful. I don't know. So I don't really know why ceiling fan lights are basically positioned in such a way that the bare light bulb is shining in your face no matter where you are in the room, right? So like if you're in the living room sitting on the couch and you have a ceiling fan, it's like, well, how about I put a light bulb in my, if I did that to you right now, you'd smack me, right? Okay, so here's a house in Florida. This one is in Naples that we were asked to design. And the question is, where do we put linear, and how much of it are we using in a particular project, right? Because if we're just doing it under the kitchen cabinet, it's not going to make a big difference. So zooming in here on a portion of it so you can see it a little easier, there are some little red dotted lines there. And I'll make them bigger so you can see where we suggested linear lighting for this particular client. It's not a small quantity, is what is the point of this slide, right? So when you have a house that has multiple layers of kitchen cabinets, when you've got islands, when you've got floating ceilings or ceiling coves, even when you don't, we're suggesting linear. There could be a lot of linear light in this project. Now, there are recessed downlights in this project as well. Haven't gotten completely rid of them, but there is a lot of linear footage that if we didn't come into this, that linear footage would be a small fraction. In fact, the only linear that was called out on the plans was one stripe here and under cabinet in the kitchen. That was it. So there was a lot of missed opportunity in terms of sales. Now, I'm not a salesman. You all know much more about that than I do. I'm just a designer. I didn't do this to sell linear product, but the person we're working with is selling a lot of linear product because of our design. So if that's the way things are at now, we can do this now. Here's where we could do it. I think you could actually flip the equation completely, and you could sell completely linear lighting with a couple of downlights. I'm going to show you a couple of real-world examples of that. And the first one is my mom's kitchen. So I grew up on a farm in central Illinois, corn and soybeans. Any of you know what bean walking or detasseling is? That's how I made money in my summers growing up, right? And after there were 5 of us, 5 kids, and after we all got out of college, my mom said, finally, they're all gone. She renovated her kitchen. That was 15 years ago, something like that, when my youngest sister finished. And she renovated her kitchen into this, just as, kind of a pretty plain but simple farmhouse kitchen. And I did the lighting. So 15 years ago, I said, I know what you need. You need 4-inch Juno cans, and you need the Juno halogen task bars, underneath the cabinets. So I specified it. Mom loved it. That's what you see in the photograph. Now, last fall, I was like, okay, Mom, you're 78 years old. This design is 15 years old. There's shadows in here. There's ugly little scallops I don't like on the soffits, I'm a better designer now. I think I should upgrade your lighting. And I called her up and I said, I'd like to redo the lighting in your kitchen. And my mom is the kind of mom who if I said, Mom, I'd like to burn your kitchen down for a school project, she would probably say, well, okay, right? Because she does that for us. And so she said, okay, yeah, sure, fine. I like my kitchen. I like it the way it is. I don't like change, but because you're you, I'll let you redo the kitchen. So I redid the kitchen. We came in, and in 2 days, this was at the start on a Monday morning, and on Wednesday morning, I took this photograph. Now, there's something important to notice about this photograph. We had not removed the downlights, but we had turned them all off. There is not a downlight on in this photograph. It is 100% linear. It's a 100% American product. We doubled the amount of light in the space. We cut the wattage by 70%. And the crazy thing about linear is that it works so differently than recessed downlights that you can see, there aren't scallops on the front of these cabinet doors anymore. Cabinet doors look completely differently than they did in this photograph, right? If you hold your hand over the counter, 6 inches over the counter underneath one of those halogen task bars or puck lights, you'll get a nice shape shadow of your hand. When you hold your hand under this, there's virtually no shadow. And when I showed my dad that, I was like, look, now I'm a vampire. I don't cast a shadow. He's like, whoa, that's really cool. And he loved the indirect as well, just as a new approach to soft lighting in the space. The favorite part, which isn't on in this photograph, is we put lighting in the pantry as well. So when you open the doors, the motion detector turns on the lights. That was the spot they said was the darkest for them. So why not? We can do that with linear. It'd be really hard to do any other way. So I'll come back to a little bit more of that. But the health reason, the medical reason was actually why I redid that kitchen. Fine Home Building asked me to write an article. It was in their Kitchens and Bath issue that just came out, and it was on aging in place, kitchens for aging in place. And they were like, can you combine kitchens, lighting, aging in place, and smart homes all into one article? And I was like, well, yeah, I do that all the time. Actually, I just don't write about it. So I wrote about it, and I used my mom's project as an example. Why? Because health, our understanding of science and the human body has just changed completely. So I'm going to back up and I'm going to give you a quick history of light. Okay, we're done with the quick history of light, right? So for thousands and thousands of years, this thing, which we call the sun, generated light for us. It gave us everything we needed for life, right, in terms of energy and brightness. It's the basis of our food chain. There's no light, we don't eat, right? And for many, many years, that regulated our life. Our ancestors thought this was so important that they worshipped light, right? So Helios was the Greek titan who rode a chariot into the sky every morning and then came down. He got overthrown by someone named Zeus, who was known for lightning bolts. The Egyptians had the sun god Ra, was their big one. In the Hebrew Bible, the first spoken words of God were, "Let there be light." So it was foundational to our ancestors. They were connected to it every day. And then Edison got this great idea. Edison's General Electric. He wanted to sell electricity to everybody, and he knew the light bulb would be a good way to get every house in the US connected to his electrical power grid. So we brought this in, we connected to it, we got electric light. It's fantastic. It saves lives, but it also did something. It completely disconnected us from the sun, right? So you hear all these things about circadian rhythm and how light affects us and how our body works differently and how melatonin suppression ends at night. Cortisol generation begins in the morning. That's a stress hormone to help wake us up. Our core body temperature changes. There are all of these cycles that happen over a 24-hour day, and they're connected to light. Anybody fly here from Spain? Right? No one's from Spain? So anybody ever flown overseas? Right? We have this thing called jet lag. Yeah. So when it gets off, when we are off from where the sun is, our body is disconnected from this by plane because it takes our body several cycles to catch up. And we get that melatonin rush when we're trying to stay awake and do things in the middle of the day. We go to sleep at night, the cortisol spike hits in, and we're like, it's the middle of the night, and we can't fall asleep because our body doesn't want us to do it. We call that jet lag. Now, in the last 100 years since Edison brought us the light bulb, we built walls between us and outside. So anybody, without looking at their watch or their phone, tell me what the weather is right now, right? And what time it is right now. Now, we all kind of know what time it is because our body's telling us that. But if we stayed in here forever, we would have no idea, right? We're completely disconnected from that natural cycle. And that creates a different condition for us where our chemicals and our body processes don't actually know what they're supposed to be doing at any given time. We have all kinds of issues from this. It's called social jet lag. It's linked to all kinds of things like drug use in teens, for example. So when your body clock is off, like when you have to get up and go to school before your body clock is ready, and so you stay up until 3 a.m. doing whatever, and you get off, guess what you need in the morning? You need an upper. Guess what you need in the evening? You need a downer, right, to get your body to behave the way it's supposed to behave. That's when most addiction starts when you're a teenager. And part of that goes back to light and how we interact with it. So these health issues, are fantastic, but out there's so much confusion in the marketplace and in the consumer. It's like, well, I don't even know how to buy a light bulb. A year ago, I wanted to buy a 60-watt replacement light bulb, so I went to Home Depot, and I ended up going to multiple stores and buying 18 of them from different manufacturers, testing them all, and then deciding I didn't like any of them, right? And I'm a lighting professional, and it's hard for me to buy a light bulb. So it's kind of, lighting is kind of a mess at this point. And how do we simplify it? One of the ways we simplify it is by having technology and experts who know what they're doing. So everybody's bought, the wrong light bulb at some point. In my mom's kitchen, I had the choice to go from glare and shadows, recessed downlights and under cabinet puck lights, to something that has all these other layers of light in it, shadow-free, relaxing, balance aid. Did you know, for example, that we use light to help us maintain our balance? And I've noticed this, our bedroom right now is pitch dark. When I get up, I have to hold on to something to stay upright. Now, if there was a line of light on the floor, my eye would see that and my balance would improve. So in aging retirement facilities, they do studies where they put light, basically toe kick lighting, along the hallway so that they can keep the bright lights off They don't go into the rooms and disturb the sleep of the people who are there. They don't go into your eyes and disturb your sleep, disturb the sleep if you're visiting or working there. But it gives you the balance aid you need. So all of a sudden, I have a medical reason, a biological reason to use toe kick lighting. And 5 years ago, I thought toe kick lighting was really cool and was the first thing I cut, right, from a design if I was trying to save money. But now there is a medical reason, there's a science reason, there's a health reason to this. If I can change the color temperature of that kitchen, I can also boost the daylight that comes in to the retina, to the person's eyes who's in there. And so if they don't get outside enough, I can start to compensate for the daylight they're missing and have that circadian cycle restored. So, that's why I did this. Part of it was to see what science or what technology could do, but also part of it was to say, how can I reduce glare for my mom? How can I reduce falls for my mom? How can I do these things for my aging parents? All right, the last section is where do we use linear? Which really should be titled, where do we not use linear, right? If I can use it in a farmhouse kitchen and make the farmhouse kitchen doesn't look super modern when I have that lighting in there, but it looks totally different. Where not linear? Everywhere. Okay, I get to ask some more questions. You're up, Ralph, because you sat in the front row. You'll never do that again, right? Osram recently introduced LEDs that use quantum dots to more efficiently produce red wavelengths for warm white LEDs. Is that true or false?
It's true.
You'd say it's true? You're a very smart young man. Now, tell me what a quantum dot is.
It's been so long since I've been in quantum physics.
Right. Did you take a quantum physics class? I never did. I have no idea what a quantum dot is, Ralph. Yeah. And if you knew, I would sit down and give you the clicker. But I don't know what a quantum dot is. I just know it's really, really small, right? And the reason I put this is true. It's a news headline. The reason I put this in there is that the smaller and smaller we get, the more and more we're going to be doing linear. And technology just continues to change, right? In lighting technology, we haven't even seen these as a product yet. Okay, here's another one. Let's see. I'll start back over on this row. Is this true or false?
That's true.
Angie. I'm going to ask Angie. Yeah. It's true. Where's Jennifer?
I say it's false.
Is this true or false?
Absolutely false.
Okay, well, we got the false one out of the way. What? Right, yes, that is not true. Okay, can I turn your name tag around? Jim? Mm-hmm. I'm glad you said yes, because I already did it. The National Institute for Aging recently gave $3.8 million to the Lighting Research Center for study of LED lighting intervention that may lead to the prevention of Alzheimer's. True or false? That is true, right? So the Lighting Research Center at Rensselaer said, they've been leading the studies, and when they do the circadian rhythm thing in a closed test situation, they see a decrease in sundowning, they see a decrease in evening agitation, they see an increase in cognitive ability of people with dementia and Alzheimer's. And they started to question, now wait a minute, if we can make the symptoms, if we can reduce the symptoms by correcting circadian rhythm, is it part of the actual pathology of the disease itself? And just in the last few weeks, I heard an NPR piece that said, one of the studies, they put people in with a CAT scan. There is a fluid that cleans our brain out when we do a certain kind of deep cycle sleep. And if we don't reach that deep cycle of sleep, it's not REM, it's a different cycle, then we're not cleaning out the plaque that is also associated and linked to Alzheimer's. So what they're hoping to find out with this study is, if we get back onto circadian rhythm, do we actually reduce the occurrence of Alzheimer's? And let me tell you, if lighting is responsible for, or at least contributing to Alzheimer's, we need to fix it, right? We need to get it better. All right, thank you. And Tina, San Diego is using smart lighting poles with cameras to convict criminals and exonerate the innocent. Is that true or false? You're guessing it's true, right? Because this one is the false one? It's too bad. Yeah, that is true. Now, it's not the lighting in that case, but as we're starting to embed chips and sensors and microphones and cameras into the lighting technology, now we're getting the smart city grid. They're using cameras to actually say, well, no, actually, he didn't commit the crime because we have him on camera over here, right? Or, yes, they did commit the crime because we can all see it. And in England, where they go even farther with that, they have people in those centers watching the cameras, and if they see someone who looks suspicious, they will follow them around camera to camera. So that person never is really conscious of being watched, but they will follow them around and say, oh, yep, they just tried to jack a car or whatever, and then they already know where they are and have the evidence needed to convict them. That's a little bit Big Brother, but scary. So I think about light not in task and ambient accent layers. I think about it in what can light actually do for us. So when I talk to a client, I don't use task ambient accent. I use what can it do for me? What can it do for you? And so I use this language. Light can help you see what you're doing so you can do better. Light can help you know where you are, where you're going, who's with you, who's sleeping during your lecture. Light can help you feel better, right? Actually heal faster. Lighting can help you focus on what's important to you. I can't tell you how much lighting is focused on the floor or the drywall ceiling, right? Is that what's most important to you? It's not focused on the ceiling in here, right? And light can help us adapt to changes as we age. I need twice as much light as my teenage sons, and my parents need twice as much light as I do to see with the same level of acuity. I call this the red velvet cake theory of lighting because I like red velvet cake. Lighting should be in layers. You've all heard that before. We should do layers of lighting. I stack them up in 5 layers. And if you take away some of these layers, you're taking away linear lighting usually, because you can't do all of these layers without it. So it's like, well, yeah, I can take that away. And I can take another one away. And you can see that the promises of light, you get less and less and less. So if you don't have linear as part of your toolkit, you're not delivering the full layered approach. So we're not linear. Here's another one. This is, that's kind of what I thought of as linear. That's a frozen yogurt shop. But then in residential, this is a high-end residence. This is a wine cellar. I have a recessed downlight on the plate. I figured out during the lecture yesterday how to do this without a downlight, so I need to go back to the homeowner and tell them we're remodeling. But everything else that you see is linear. Of course, we've got under cabinet, which everyone knows about. The strips are integrated into the wine racks themselves, so that when you pull it out, the light is on the label itself. And then when you push it in, it's fine. And then we also added a layer that's underneath the crown lighting to illuminate the cherry woodwork and not necessarily the drywall ceiling. So I'd rather call attention to the cherry than the drywall. So here's a piece with linear lighting. It's a very traditional space. There's one downlight, and I would love to get rid of it. Here's some sketches from some of our projects, just to show you that when we talk about linear lighting with clients or talk about lighting, we're often sketching it in, under cabinets, above coves, built into the ceiling to create visual interest. It's all over in bathrooms around the mirrors now, of course. Underneath floating vanities is kind of standard. We're used to that at this point, but we're using it across the board in a number of different projects at a number of different styles. So the linear can be a pretty serious replacement. We can even use it as a continuous step light down a hallway to keep light out of our eyes, but put it where we want to, and give the house a very contemporary or modern feel. Yes, we do crazy projects this is on a Royal Caribbean cruise ship, where we've got the RGB white in this so that we can do whatever color we want, right, in the space. But do we use it in, we use it in commercial spaces. Here's a school, and as the linear performance goes up, we can start to replace some of the standard linear fixtures with actual things that we're embedding into the ceiling, like here. This one, yes, there's a cove light. This project they're moving into this week. But you can see that there's linear light there, and of course in the toe kick and on the counter. But then we also replaced all the downlights in that ceiling. In fact, that ceiling is a concrete plane, and they have 2 inches, right? They've got 2 inches of space between a little spacer and a piece of 1/2-inch drywall. And so I said, well, we could get some 2-inch downlights, but is downlights the right choice here to spread out and get light in here? So we lined these up with the mullions in the glass. You might say, wow, that's fine for South Beach. This is South Bend, Indiana, right? So if we're doing LED linear in South Bend, Indiana, it's not it's not that you only have to do it in big urban markets. And of course, modern versus traditional, what makes a coffered ceiling look great? Light can be a major component of that. Okay, I've just got a couple more questions. Let's see. Joel? Human-centric lighting for wellness includes sensors and controls, color tunability, dimming, personal sensitivity. Yes.
True.
Yeah, that's true, right? So human-centric lighting, when I'm talking about that, includes all of these things. You need to be thinking about light that changes color and light that is controlled, right? Also, to get all of those effects. Jeff. Acuity recently announced it would acquire the Luminaires Group, parent of A-Light, Cyclone, Eureka, Luminaire LED, and Luminous, which could bring Acuity's annual sales to $3.8 billion. Is that true or false?
I have no idea.
Well, I tell you, here's a way to answer that question. If you see a headline that says Acuity recently purchased, it's true, right? Yeah, it's true. Luminous is a linear manufacturer. So when you get somebody like Acuity buying linear manufacturers, you know that if the biggest players in this game are trying to get into linear or trying to expand their linear lighting, it's not something that you can ignore. Emmanuel? Yeah, American Lighting has cool new sheet products that can illuminate bar tops, graphics, and other luminous surfaces all at amazing prices.
Where's the Tesla beast?
No, there's no Tesla. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
it's true. It's true. Right, right. That was a shout out to you. All right, all right. Suzanne? GE makes appliances, light bulbs, and jet engines. Is that true or false?
True.
Right. This is also a trick question.
Of course.
GE used to, right? But they sold off their light bulb business. And they don't really make the appliances anymore either. But the significance of this, of course, is that this used to be EGE, or Edison's General Electric, until he got booted and became just General Electric. They stripped his name off. This company doesn't do light bulbs anymore. Edison doesn't do light bulbs anymore. And that's to say, maybe we don't need to do light bulbs either, right? Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up, and I'm just going to say, how do you convince people to use linear, right? How do you convince your clients to use linear? Well, sometimes I use their own research. House and Pinterest are all over the place, right? Magazine articles are all over the place. People will come in and be like, I like this chandelier. And I'm like, that is a beautiful chandelier. And there are, let me just point out to you that there are 400 feet of tape light in this photograph as well. Because some of those really nice photographs, they've got linear lighting all over them. It's like, oh, yeah, I know you like that wall sconce, but look at the linear lighting that's under the vanity, right? You can use what they find out there to say, yeah, okay, but look what the ceiling is doing in this photograph, right? So when they come into you with images, go ahead and use them. Or have your own to show them to say, yeah, we can do that, but look what we could do if we use some linear lighting in the space as well. We often say, look, red velvet cake lighting is multiple layers. If I take the linear lighting out of this photograph, what are you going to be left with? Well, I can take the cove light out. You don't really need that, so let's just turn that off. Yeah, it's still a nice space, right? Lost a little something there. Maybe you don't say, oh, I don't need light under the bar. Look at what it does to the chair, right here when that goes off. Like, it's not just the bar that's being illuminated by that light. The floor, the chair, everything in it are going to change. Okay, no decorative fixtures, we'll take care of those. If we take the two linears that are in the cabinets and under the cabinets out, we're left with recessed downlights. And isn't that a beautiful space, right? So when I show customers or clients, I'm like, would you like A or would you like B, right? They all say A, they don't want this. They say that's ugly. That's sarcasm, by the way. Here's another shot of the of the wine cellar with the one downlight. And that one downlight bothers me because it's there on the ceiling, right? Everything else in that space is linear. The moral of the story, here's the questions. Is there money to be made using linear lighting? Yes, good, thank you, Leslie, I appreciate that very much. Are there health reasons to use linear lighting? Suzanne's nodding, thank you, Suzanne, right? Where can you use linear lighting? Everywhere, right? A walnut bar in a classic home has got a lot of feet of linear in that assembly. Yep. And how do you get them? How do you convince them? Use their own research, right? Show them their own pictures. Is one of the ways to do that. So we need to be doing linear lighting. We need to sell American lighting. David Warfel needs better jokes. Those are what I wanted you to come away from with this presentation. I hope you got them. And if there are any questions, let me know, but I'll pass it back over to you, Jennifer. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah.